So, for our first project for your second year in game design, we're going to be making a 3D maze style game. For this game, you will be using the new using a 3D interface like we were practicing before with your house. So what you're going to do is going to need to create a new project, and I'll just walk you through it even though I've already set mine up. You go to new project, you want to make sure it's selected as 3D. The reason we don't need 3D with extras is, as you can see here, it's got presets and examples and the post-processing stack with the built-in render. I don't really need all that stuff right now. We're just going to do a basic 3D project. Go ahead and name it whatever you'd like and create. But I already have my game, so I'm just going to load that up. So I started a little bit on this because these are things that you are going to be pretty familiar with having done your house. Is we're going to set up a maze. So therefore we need some key components, right? We need a ground, we need walls, and we need a player. Now for our maze, thinking back to the past when we've set up our core components, things we absolutely must have in our game whenever we're designing, that's where we start. So with what's a maze without walls, right? We need to have that sort of setup. For this game, we're also going to set it up so that it can be, if you choose a first-person maze or a maze where in which the camera follows the player. But either way, we know we'll need a player that can move around so that the person who is controlling the player can solve the maze. Another core component, we're eventually going to definitely need some kind of mechanic in which the player goes from scene to scene. So when they pass one maze, they need to be able to go to another maze. We, of course, need our scene flow from start to gameplay to restart or quit, all of those things. We'll deal with menus a little bit more since we didn't do a lot of in-game menus, so we'll work on figuring out how to pause a game to do a menu and make selections from there. So, uh, basically, what you're going to need to do is to set up your scene. Let's go ahead and create some empty objects in your scene, and we'll call these ground, walls, and player. These are three physical things that we know we are absolutely going to need in our project. So, with these three things, you're also going to eventually need a materials folder, and you're going to need a prefabs folder, correct? So those are going to be things that you're for sure going to need. We also know eventually we'll need a scripts folder. So if I right click, I'm going to create my underscore scripts because, of course, we want the things that we know we're going to need access to readily and easily at the very top. I haven't underscored materials, so I haven't decided if I really think I'm going to need to grab into it a lot or not, but we'll see. As you can see before this video, I had created a plane. That is because I first started to record this video and my computer crashed. So, you probably remember this process from your other games. So whenever I created an empty, I renamed it ground, and then within my ground, I created a plane. This plane doesn't have anything on it right now, no materials or anything. So let's look at this ground. Let's change the color. So you can see I'm changing the ground material down here, and it's changing it on my plane because it's already been applied. So let's say I kind of want my whole theme to be pastel colors. And a fun way, if you've never gone to look for color schemes before, if you go to Coolers, coolers.co. I wasn't positive, so I didn't want to type it in and go somewhere awful. Coolers.co is like a generator for colors. So if I hit generate, it'll generate a color scheme. I don't really want a tutorial, but it's got this kind of boring thing here. So let's hit space, and it'll generate another one. I kind of like this color. I'm going to lock that, and I'm going to adjust this one a little bit. Let's make it a little bit more saturated, maybe a little bit more purple, kind of like what I had in my scene already. Yeah, we'll lock that, and then if you hit space, it'll generate other colors based on that. So I'm really digging this color set already. I think I want my floors to be lighter and my walls to be darker. So let's go with this one. And you can actually get the code from this. So if I click on this, it's selected. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to go back into my game here. And on your selector, if you click this, this is that hexadecimal code that it just had on the other site. So if I'm going to take out that pound sign because it doesn't know what to do with that. And nope, that's not this one. Okay. BAAFDD. A. No, it's not working. Okay, never mind. So this is pretty close to what I want right here. I think I'm going to change some of the stuff and tweak it. And as per usual, I'm not going to kind of go through this whole thing and mess with it on screen. I'll probably mess with it a lot more later, so that you'll get the idea later. So yeah, okay. So I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop myself because I'm focusing too much on one thing, and you know how that distracts whenever you're trying to get anything done. Something I forgot to do. Whenever I created these empty objects, I didn't reset their transform, so I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go to my empty objects, right click, reset transform. And remember, the reason that we do that is because then everything is working from the same scale. It knows exactly where everything is supposed to be based on a 0, 0, 0. So whenever you move it, it's relative to 0, 0, 0 and not relative to anything else. So I'm going to reset this to 0, 0, 0 as well. Alright, now everything better. Better, better, better. Alright, now for walls. We're going to use simple objects for this whole project, so I suppose if you'd really like round walls, you could, but ideally, probably walls are going to end up being cubes. I suppose you could use planes, but you can. The reason we wouldn't really want to use planes for walls is that clipping can get very bad. So if your camera swings around a corner and then swings behind the wall, all of a sudden it's in another plane of existence, and it doesn't look good. So I'm going to use a cube. You could also use a quad if you want some interestingly shaped walls. You can edit those shapes a little bit more. So inside my walls, I'm making a cube, and then I'm going to edit it, move it around, do what I want with it. So let's move it, I don't know, to the side here. Let's see. Let's stretch it long ways. It's the beginnings of a wall. I think I want it to be tall. I feel like mazes are more imposing when they're taller. I don't know if that's maybe just a me thing. But that makes it, kind of neat like so. And then I'm just going to remember you can duplicate your objects by either right clicking and then duplicate. You can control C and control V to copy and paste. You could control D to duplicate. I'm going to hit command D to duplicate it. And I'm going to select my new cube and move it out here to my other wall. And I'm already seeing that this is maybe not quite big enough. So let's adjust it before we make any more changes. It's okay if it goes out a little bit past the floor in this instance. I don't really mind that. I just want to make sure that it's completely blocking off the outside. And it's called cube right now, so I'm going to call this outer wall. And I'm going to call that one outer wall 2, so it automatically picks up that naming convention. If I command D, three, and here we're going to want to rotate this, correct? So let's grab this, and you can rotate. And remember, we have all these axes to worry about now. Before we only had two. So now we can rotate around the X, the Y, and the Z. So let's say we wanted to rotate around the Y axis 90 degrees. That takes it like so. So 90 degrees is a pretty simple math number to remember when you want to rotate something. 90 degrees that way looks like that. 90 degrees to the Z axis flips it over on its side. So obviously we want this if it's going to be our outer wall. We want to translate our position. Take it this way, take it out. Starting to look like a real wall here. And if we duplicate this one and move it to the other side, all right, we have the beginnings of a room right here. It's not super neat right now. You can go back and neaten it up if you want. That's, of course, up to you. So we'll want to create a material. So just a reminder, you right click on your materials folder, create material. We'll call this one wall. And actually, these names are kind of terrible. Let's rename these. So you could remember right click and rename, or you could slow double click. I'm going to call this ground mat. Mat is usually short for material, so wall mat. And let's look back at my coolers colors. I had this nice mint green. I think that would be a nice contrast. So let's go with that. I'm going to do this color. It is D8FFDD. Oops. Hit the wrong button. Tried to duplicate. There we go. And it's very light. So let's take that color and make it a little bit darker. I like that. That looks kind of like a smoky sort of color. And then I want to apply it to my walls. And now, unfortunately, I'm applying it after the fact. So if you're following directly along with this, you'll have to apply it to each one. So say, for instance, I wanted to apply it like so. It works that way. It works easier than trying to like select outer wall and dragging over to this side. Like that. And here. And here. Alright. So now I have wall mat applied to all of my stuff. And I don't know, maybe it is a little bit too dark. I could lighten it up, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. That's for fine tuning for later. Right now this is not a maze, correct? There's no walls in between, but that's alright. We're going to create a character. And this character, we're going to use a capsule. Just because capsules are very simple. They don't have a lot of, I don't know how to say, they don't have a lot of detail to them. They can easily be a player if we wanted it to. We could, if you wanted desperately to make a rag doll and learn to animate, we could do that. But for right now, let's stick with a capsule. And we know that we probably don't want it to be white, right? So let's make it one of the other colors. I'm going to use my color scheme here. Let's go with pink. So our player is going to be pink, the wall is green, and the floor purple. Need to make a material. Create material and call it player mat. And in player mat, let's change the color, hexadecimal, change that. I'll mess with how shiny and whatnot it is after I see what it looks like on my player and a light on the scene. Let's see. I think I like it very smooth and maybe a little bit more metallic, so it's got some contrast to it. Yeah. All right. And one thing I didn't mention, definitely if we need a method to go between scenes, we probably need some kind of trigger for the scene to change. So for that, let's go ahead and make ourselves a goal. So let's create an empty. We will reset its transform and call this goal. And on goal, let's give it an object. And this can be completely up to you if you want a certain sort of object. I'm going to do a cylinder. Always feel like with cylinders, it just seems like they would make sense. They're like, that's what pads look like whenever you step onto them. We'll call it that. That size is probably alright. Let's look at coolers, see if there's a good color for it. Maybe blue. Maybe like a brighter version of this blue, but I think blue. And we'll make a material. Goal mat. Paste it in. And this should be getting to be kind of old hat for you at this point. So now you've got the ability to make things, add material, alter them, move them around freely, like so. So this is, right now it's a very easy maze. If I had to apply physics to this character, I could walk straight across and go straight to the goal. But that's whatever. So from here on out, my next challenge to you is to take this and create a somewhat simple level 1 maze that you can navigate through. You don't have to add any scripts to the player yet. We'll work on that next. So just try to figure out how make yourself a little simple maze that would look like a level 1 that provides enough challenge to keep the player interested, but not so much challenge that they don't want to continue. So complete that challenge and come back when you're ready. So this is what I came up with for my simple maze. The character would have a pretty straightforward path just around the outside edge, up and over, and then down to my portal right here. Um, what you came up with can look completely different from mine. That doesn't really matter to me. It's just a simple design for my level 1. One other thing I'd like to go ahead and take care of while I'm thinking about it is I'd like to get the camera set up into a location that will be ready to follow the player. So, whenever you move something that is childed to something else, so like say I moved ground, I would move the whole tile. I gotta undo that before something terrible happens, right? But you see, if I move the group, it moves the whole thing. So for our camera, if we want it to follow the player, then therefore our camera needs to be childed to our player. So I'm going to go ahead and take my main camera that it automatically gave me, and I'm going to drop it into my player. And so now my main camera is selected, and as I move it, you can see my little camera preview down there is showing movement with that. But if I move just the player, like so, and then I switch back to my main camera so I can get a preview, you can see it's much closer than it was before. But if I move it back, you can see the camera is still pocketed inside there. You can see just a little bit of that icon. And remember, if you don't want the gizmos, or if you can't see the gizmos, you can make them bigger so you can see them better, or smaller. It's up to you, or you can hide them altogether. But for right now, that's good for me. If you want to like have a look at just what your game looks like in not in like in just the preview, you can always hit play, and you'll look at the game view itself. But you can push forward, backward, side to side, left, right. Nothing happens because you haven't coded any kind of programming into it yet. But you can at least get a feel for like how everything looks. It's very basic right now, but that's okay. We don't need it to be super fancy just yet. So the next thing I just want to challenge you to do on your own, because you should know how to do this, is to go ahead and make up scenes for your start screen and your end screen. They don't have to be hooked up yet. We'll just let you make them. So if you'd like to make a start screen, make sure you put some buttons on your start screen. Make sure that you have, a title of some sort. At this point, you can choose if you want to go ahead and find some text for your title screen. You can do that. That's great. What you think you want to title your game, I'm just going to call mine Maze Run. And I'm going to use my kind of pastel color scheme in all of my buttons and designs, and probably Text Mesh Pro to find some kind of, I don't know, speedy looking text or maybe a maze like text. We'll see. See what I come up with. And then an end screen. You don't have to hook either of those up to buttons, but just make sure that they're there and ready to be hooked up. Remember, the buttons don't necessarily have to be physically a button. You can turn text itself into a button by adding the component onto it. So, say I were to add some text onto this. Let's go with UI, Text Mesh Pro. I have to import the Text Mesh Pro essentials, so I'm going to go ahead and do that because I know I'm going to want my Text Mesh Pro because it's much prettier. And then I'm going to close out of that now that that's imported. And remember, it imports that Text Mesh Pro down there. But you can add a component onto your text so that your text itself becomes a button, like so. And this is how you hook it up. You don't have to actually use, like on the canvas, go to UI, create, button, blah, blah, blah. So you can do it straight from just text if you don't want the shape around it. So anyway, that's my final challenge to you for this video. Make your start screen, your end screen, and get it all set up and ready to go so that we can start hooking up buttons and start to build a game flow, because we're going to start scripting here pretty soon. So go ahead and take care of that. And if you'd like another look at my scene here, let me go back to my view. You can see this is my scene, how I have it set up. If yours looks completely different, that is a-okay. I also, something I didn't mention, I did make my scene, my plane, 2 times bigger. I just went over to scale and doubled it. That way it just had more room for my maze, but you could just scale everything else down and that would be equally valid as an answer. So that's all up to you. But anyway, I keep getting distracted. So you need to make your scenes, start screen, end screen, and get them ready to go, and put your camera as a child of your player, and I think that's about it for just about now. So, see you in the next video.